There are no unknowns to us on this panel in terms of people, but there are a lot of unknowns to us in terms of how this market, how these technologies, how these tools are working and working together or not. And I think we have sort of teed up an interesting set of, of issues already. I wanted to very quickly, well, first of all, just in case people need to be reminded, this is Dr. Guarente, MIT professor of biology, co-founder of Elysium Health. This is David Thibodeau, head of Wellvest Capital, obviously. This is Josh from Split Stage, Josh Sarmir, co-founder and CEO. And lastly, we have Matt Decker from Gore. So this is my prerogative to ask, interesting and funny questions. So the first is going to be a little bit of a rapid fire, just to get us all warmed up, and then we'll calm it down after that. So this is going to be yes or no questions. Those are the best questions because they're short and they're easy. So was 13.7 billion too little or too much to pay for Whole Foods?
That's about right.
Too little.
Definitely not. Too little.
Too little.
Too little.
Too little. Interesting.
2 hours paid for.
Okay. Will you live longer by taking a pill?
Maybe.
Yes.
I got to go with him. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Do you use a wearable device?
It's my wristwatch.
Ah, that doesn't count.
No.
Well, if it's a smartwatch.
That was a joke.
Oh, that could be not a joke, but
No.
you don't. Okay.
That's currently.
Now, currently.
Yes.
Thinking about it.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you feel traditional medicine understands wellness?
Traditional.
Yes.
Absolutely no.
Western? No.
Okay, gets interesting.
Yes.
Is nutrition overrated?
No.
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 No. What percentage improvement does your own solution provide to wellness? It's not a yes or no question technically, but it is a percentage question. They're short answers.
A solution of what? What problem? Define the
To
problem.
the problem
solving.
of wellness, my friend.
I can't answer that.
All right, David.
Well, capital is critical. It's the fuel that keeps everybody moving and keeps their companies growing. So I'd say we're probably, depending on where you are in your stage, it could be from 100% to 20%.
We can help people improve performance by 25% as a cap.
None. I'm looking for solutions.
Actually, let me give you my card.
All right, so now let's get serious. How did each of you get into the wellness field? Lenny,
Our research brought us into it because, I believe that, you can't ignore science. You ignore science at your own peril. And our research just took us in that direction. And I believe that while it's true that it's very important to monitor all aspects that affect your wellness, diet, lifestyle, exercise, and so on and so forth. I totally agree with that. But beyond that, I think science has a lot to offer, especially in the past 10, 20 years. There have been so many important discoveries that we would be silly not to try to take advantage of that. So our research brought us in the area of calorie restriction because it just turned out that what we identified in our research really are agents that deliver health benefits due to a low-calorie diet. And so what we wanted to do was to try to develop basically a mimetic of a low-calorie diet so that you could get some of those benefits. And it's not necessarily a tiny, narrow slice of the pie. It may be a bigger slice of the pie. Sure. So that's how we get into it.
Right. David, you've answered some of that, but why did you get into it?
So I answered the very first part some 30 years ago. But what kept me in this business is the fact that the solutions that seemed to be out there were not working, and it required additional out of the box thinking. And so many of the larger companies in the food and nutrition space didn't have the capacity, didn't have the creativity, didn't have the drive to look for solutions that were outside of the box. So that's kept me in it, because I do believe that many of these companies that we see here today and around the country, and indeed the world, are making the difference.
Josh.
I'd say the market. As a startup and a business, you always come at it one way, and some of the conversations we've had with like GlaxoSmithKline, they seem to think that we might be able to get a head start on Parkinson's or dementia. And so we're really looking to the customers to help us understand how we best can use that product. And we also look at who was, in the Super Bowl. Both the Atlanta Falcons and the Patriots spend money on neuroscience to try and get a little bit of efficiency out of their players. So it's really the market that's telling the innovators, where's there a need or a want.
Okay.
So I was actually developing materials for firefighting safety and performance, and actually realized that a lot of the test methods were ineffective, and in fact the entire industry was thinking about firefighter heat stress and firefighter safety the wrong way. And the only way to actually influence that was to stop developing materials and actually to become an expert in comfort, so that I could actually have the conversation with the industry and the firefighters to start to rectify that.
Perfect. So I'm going to have 3 more rapid-fire questions to introduce a very, very serious question. So here's my question. What year did you become conscious about your own nutrition? You needed a year, so that's like 1989.
A year, okay.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to have to, this is going to be like a really early year. 1968.
Good answer? David?
1984.
I'm young in 94.
1994.
I was going to say like 96, 97.
How long do you plan to live?
I have no number in mind. I hope it's long.
David?
That I can't answer that question with a number, but what I can say is that I'd like to live whatever amount of years I have left. I'd like to be healthy and active.
I thought we said there was a pill. So
88.
Okay, good number.
very specific.
So I'm going to share, over the last month I've been on this atrocious diet, and I went to this holistic nutritionist, not by my choice, but strongly arm wheeled into this by my wife and friends and various things. This was a holistic nutritionist, and they believe in kinesiology and listening to your body. It's like some very interesting ways of your body supposedly showing resistance or non-resistance to different herbal remedies. And I'm, as a consequence of this, on like 5 different herbal remedies that are causing all kinds of things, and on a gluten-free, wait a second, gluten-free, alcohol-free, and dairy-free diet. Does this work? Does this not work? And I'll tell you the answer after.
So wait, you want a quick answer? Or do
Yes.
you want to not work?
Yes, works.
Really?
Really?
No, I think it does, but I think you need to balance it. Like for you, I think that's too many things at once, maybe.
Matt? I did this all in the interest of science, by the way. Yes?
No.
All right. So I have to say it's complicated, right? I mean, I think, but let's get away from me for a second. I mean, it's sort of interesting whether it works or not for me, but let's bring in the audience here. I think the question I am asking you is, where is the science at in all these areas? And that this is not a short question, short answer question. I'm interested, and I want to start with Lenny, perhaps. Are we early in the science?
Definitely.
And in what areas are we early? In what areas would you, on the other hand, say, and these others, other panelists can chime in, that there's a confluence of factors coming together versus we are very early?
I mean, really, we're really early on the science. And as I said, I don't think a company like Elysium would have been possible 5 or 10 years ago. So that's how early it is. And with regard to put this in perspective, you keep alluding to herbs, and brings up to mind traditional Chinese medicine. Okay, so I personally believe that there's something there, and it's not baloney, because anything that has, and I think that people there have really been aware of their wellness for many, many, many centuries. And for something to last and be carried along means that there's some probability that it really works, it really does something. And so I think that's a good place for science to come in now and say, okay, let's figure out what it is in the herbs, or combination of things, and how do we design a test to show that it really works. So I think that there's a lot out there that can be captured, and it will be done, but we're at the very early stages now.
And let me just broaden the question a little bit as we move along. The question is also not just where's the science and does it work, and to what extent does it work, but what does it do, right? I mean, I think the topic of our event here is very broad. So the question of where's the science and does it work or not is, we're asking many, many questions at the same time. So when you're answering the question, feel free to limit it to some of the areas that you've been working on. But David, what's your answer? What would you say? You've watched this now and participated in it for 30 years. For you, what do you see in terms of things coming out of universities versus perhaps do you also invest in things not coming out of science that you also think work?
Well, I think science is an evolving, it's evolving, it's always evolving, and our knowledge base is evolving. We're learning new things every day, and even something that we thought was fact 5 years ago may not be fact today. So to the extent that we can identify through science why something works or doesn't work, I think is really important. I also think that science doesn't answer every question, and in many cases, nutrition is a good example. Your diet. So is it the gluten-free part? Is it the dairy-free part? Is it the alcohol-free part? Well, what happened? What was the outcome? Was the outcome that you lost 20 pounds? Was the outcome that your knees don't ache as much because you don't have that extra 50 pounds? What is the outcome? So it's not always science-based. I think it's what are you doing to change the paradigm in your own health and wellness journey. So that's the best way I can answer that. Sometimes there's science behind it. Sometimes there's not. There's good science that pesticides work, right? There's no science that says pesticides are bad for you, but people don't want pesticides. Well, you can argue that, and it has been argued in the marketplace for 50 years.
So Josh, there's in neuroscience, there's also the psychology component, no matter what you do. Can you maybe comment on that sort of complexity of motivation versus real sort of physiological phenomena?
Yeah, and just to touch on that, I think when you say, does science work, I think we need to think about work on what. I think there's a very, elephant in the room here where is it a Band-Aid or the root cause, right? And a lot of science today is geared towards Band-Aids. My head hurts, and it's a pill, and you're not really looking at the root cause. And I think what we're seeing again is the market is telling us, the consumers, I don't want that. I need to understand the root cause. What is my problem? And so I think we're starting to see a lot of innovation that's early there, where we start to combat traditional pharmaceutical to go after a Band-Aid and look at the root cause. But from a neuroscience standpoint, I've seen. I used to work at Raytheon, and there were people like Amazon and companies taking our scientists to solve basic problems. And with the wellness space, we're all assets. You're a tool to get your job done, tasks done. Companies look at you, and as you sit today, science and innovation can make you better. We can actually enhance your performance without any of these changes, right? And I think science is there to allow us to become better at what we do today and then supplement. And I think we're seeing a lot of these good products do that.
Matt, can you comment maybe specifically on the area of smart fabrics? Is that sort of coming of age? We had at least one startup here, I believe she's still out there, but Figure 8. But there's this idea of really embedding really advanced functionality into fabrics. You guys were early out with performance wear.
Yep.
That field is arguably, from my limited knowledge, starting to change pretty rapidly right now.
It is, and I'd say it's a couple years out, right? So people are starting, one of the things that we've been involved in most recently is actually people had really nice responses from the sensors themselves. So they were getting the feedback they liked, but people wouldn't wear the garments. And so we again came in as kind of consultants around, so why? And it gets to the objection, people won't wear something if it's not comfortable. And so they were incorporating these conductive fibers to transmit the data within the garments. And what was happening was they were rubbing on the subjects during the activity. And so even though they were getting the data that they wanted, they hadn't designed the garment in a way that was useful. And so again, this comes back to, we developed 40 years of science around comfort. So now we're kind of consulting for some of these companies to help them understand how to actually build the garments in a way that people will wear so that they maximize the benefit.
So I'm going to bring in the audience real quickly, so be prepared for that. We have this, microphone. We'll be throwing it around. Please don't be scared. But I wanted to ask the panel one area as well. So when we thought out this workshop, and by the way, this workshop is the brainchild of Marcus, not me, who was training to become an Olympic athlete in rowing. So this is about not just sort of nutrition and wellness. We're also interested in sort of sports, and we're interested in performance at work. You can pick any of those two areas, that we haven't talked so much about, but performance in sports or performance at work. So I believe all of us here in this room are professionals, and if there was a miracle drug, a miracle herbal supplement, or any sort of miracle cure that would make us just a percentage point more wired at 4 o'clock without the caffeine, or something that would make us maybe cognitively enhanced, I think, and we believed it, we would all do it. Where are we with that? So, we had a chair here that makes us ergonomically more dynamic. Where are we with performance at work? Does Elysium, for instance, have any, aging is one area, but, living well, where are we with that?
I would say there are two places where even the aging part intersects with your question.
Yeah.
One is, this biology is very fundamental to cells, NAD and sirtuins, and it affects circadian rhythm. Okay, and circadian rhythm is very important, that everything, all our metabolism doesn't just happen willy-nilly. It's staged at the right time of day, okay? And our circadian clocks weaken as we get older. And to reinforce that, it will help you sleep better potentially and perform better. So that's one place where I think it intersects. Second place is, okay, let's say we're performing well now, but the question is, how long can we keep it up, okay? And I think that's a really important question. That directly relates to aging. And I think that a goal, and I agree with you to say that you want to stay as healthy. It isn't so much how long you live; it's to be healthy for that period. And that's really the aim, I think, of aging research at large. And that would certainly affect your job performance moving forward.
I loved your phrase there, how to fall apart more slowly, he said earlier. I just love that. It's a wonderful soundbite. I wish we all could fall apart more slowly. David, what is your view on this, performance?
I think there's not a
aspect.
single solution. These are there's multi-pronged solutions to this. It's a holistic approach to whether it's work, whether it's play, whether it's sport. I think you have to access a lot of different devices or nutrition. You have to put all these together to be a better person. And you have to make that decision. The individual has to make that decision. Nobody's going to make that for you. Having a pill do that for you is not going to work. You personally have to do it. Maybe someday we can reprogram our brains to not like a big piece of chocolate cake in front of a TV for 6 hours. We may want to have a good healthy meal and go out and take a run. But until that day happens, I think it's a combination of all the different opportunities we have to be healthier.
Josh, as you're answering this question, maybe you can represent the broad swath of startups here on stage a little bit, and sort of where are we with the performance aspect?
Yeah, I think what we're talking about is there a pill we can take, and we joked about that, and again I go back to my analogy of a Band-Aid, and I think a lot of people are just trying to push themselves to be better, force myself to either take a supplement, and it's a different supplement or a different app that's going to make me be better. And I think David said earlier, it's really about a lifestyle change, right? It's about choices. Am I going to eat this or not? Am I going to use this app or not, or this data? And the market is really hungry, like we were talking about. They're hungry for answers on how can I be a better person? How can I live longer? How can I do my job better? And so from an innovative standpoint, there's a lot of science, as I said earlier, that as you sit today, without having to take a supplement or an inject, you can gain efficiency. It may even allow you to do different jobs better that you couldn't. And it's this awareness. And so I think part of it is the science can give individuals an education.
Yeah.
How do I sit? So then they can be directed at nutrition or exercise or things like that.
I don't have a good answer as that. One of the things that I've seen making its way now from university into actually clothing is a lot of the biomechanics space. So the study of aging and how the bone density deteriorates over time and muscle density deteriorates over time. There's actually some clothing being designed now that imparts a certain amount of restriction that actually forces basically muscle to work without just during the normal walking process or arm raising process. So you're actually forcing, especially the elder populations, to get some muscle stimulation they wouldn't otherwise get without actually inducing discomfort. So they found a really narrow band, and pulling that into clothing is.
So we'll talk more about what kinds of exciting things you're seeing emerging and in the near future. But I wanted to see if we can bring in the audience because, who cares about my questions? Well, let's take a look and see if you guys have something. And Kim has a question.
Thank you. I think one of the big elephants in the room that nobody's really addressed in all of this is the world of insurance and healthcare insurance and all of that, and how that drives behavior both of people and of all the companies that are in this space. I mean, granted, it seems like everybody we talked to has been trying to avoid the regulatory space and the insurance space, but nonetheless, I think they're trying to avoid it because of the way it is right now. Any comments on things that maybe we could look for in the future or we should be thinking about as we change healthcare thinking?
Interesting.
So I think there's a predominant view, and it's the same example I gave when walking across the bridge to Cambridge. And it starts small, and then it starts to gain a lot of momentum. And I don't think the insurance companies have nodded to wellness. They have wellness programs. But if any of you have been on your healthcare provider or your insurance provider, those wellness programs are pretty thin. They're not the kind of wellness programs that we believe you need to make fundamental changes. So time will change that as more and more people get into. I mean, there's statistics. 80 million people are interested in health and wellness. Okay, 80 million out of 320. We need more, and every year more coming into that space. That will drive it. No one went to Whole Foods 10 years ago, right? Whole Foods sells today to Amazon, right? It will happen because there's a groundswell. It can't be legislated. It can't be insured against. So the group, the population, is going to have to make that change. And it will happen, and we will fundamentally change the way we look at, I think, healthcare and approaching healthcare. But it's not going to happen overnight.
I can just talk loud.
No, please
About your
don't.
second
Hello,
slide.
excuse me, sir. We don't do that. We have video.
Matt, on about your second slide, you asked the question, who wants it? And I think we've seen examples where good science will produce a solution irrefutably backed, but which is expensive, inconvenient, and tastes terrible. I, in fact, have been responsible for one of two of those, and they don't sell. People won't do it. And as innovators, are we doing an inadequate job if we don't ask the question, who cares, and talk a little bit about compliance?
Compliance.
Compliance? I think to your point, are we doing a bad job? I think where we are in the space of capital and things is people are throwing money at these ideas quickly, and they're saying go, and you create something, but no one's talked to the market yet, right? Or they think they have an idea and they haven't shifted. And so part of what we went through is having meetings ahead of time, because rather than having a finished product, what we think, either that the science, like Dr. Miller or myself or the business, you need to hear how these people are going to use it. And one of the things that we found is we're going to have tremendous impact with military and police, but we're going to have pushback from unions, and there's compliance. And so before you push your company forward and raise too much money, you need to know the obstacles you can face and how you can really help your customer, because you don't want to present yourself and actually become a challenge. And we've seen that too.
All right. And so my question is a bit broader, and we've thrown the term wellness around a lot today. And I think it's really fascinating that our definition of wellness has changed and will probably change again more and more in the future. And so my question for you is, given that wellness today goes way beyond eat less, exercise more, right? Our understanding of wellness is more complex. How would you define wellness in maybe a sentence or two?
So you should have been the moderator. That was a great question. Anyone want to take a crack at that? How do you define wellness? We have left it a little ambiguous in the invitation, but
I would just quickly, am I happy, am I healthy, right? Am I happy? Wellness is not only just exercise or weight, but am I happy at my job? Am I happy with my partner? Am I happy where I'm living? Because that will affect everything else, right? And I think wellness today is where everybody's working. You need to think about that. But then you have to couple that with, am I healthy? Right? You know, eating chocolate cake in front of the TV, you might be happy, but there's a balance where you need to go to the science and the doctors and make sure that you're on a path that will promote you to be able to make the right choices. I think it's about the choices you make.
one or two of you to answer that.
Yeah, I mean, I think of wellness as, you know, you think of everything that's important to you in life, what you want to do in life, short term, long term. Is there anything impeding you from doing it? And if the answer is yes, you know, then in some sense, you know, your wellness is not complete.
So wellness is a definition that was only created 10 years ago. Wellness didn't exist in the dictionary when I started out in this industry. And so the way we kind of look at it in our little corporation, and you know, it's what are you taking and what are you giving back? And so are you actually are you taking because you are living an unhealthy lifestyle, whatever that might mean? To you, it may mean something different than to you. But if you're utilizing resources, you know, do you brush your teeth with the tap water running, or do you turn it off? You're using resources if you're doing it with it on, right? If you're living an unhealthy lifestyle and you're requiring more of that healthcare dollar than you should, and the person who's got Alzheimer's, he's trying, you know, can't get the resources to do it, then that's not wellness. So you want to get to that point, right? You want to get to a point where you're giving more than you're taking. So that's how I kind of define wellness, and it's different for each and every one of us. You know, I like running, I like hiking, I like being active, right? But you may not like that. You may like being able to read a book for 8 hours a day, but you're doing it in a way that you're not sitting eating bonbons, right? And creating all kinds of other problems. So that's my definition.
We'll come back to that question. Let's hear one from Marcus.
What is the one, so if you could recommend one hack, one product, service, technology, process, you know, it could be a diet, could be maybe sauna, can't be your own product or company. If you could recommend one thing that you personally use, what would it be?
So we didn't coordinate this. That was my last question, so now I lost the end of my panel debate, and I'm frantically now looking for another final question.
So I don't think that's the right question.
Thank
I
you.
think you're asking the wrong question. You're asking the question that everybody in the broader community wants to know. Is there a one size that fits all? Negative, there's not. So I think the way we need to think about this, and the way the industry that I play in thinks about it, and those that are on the forefront, it's more than just one solution. It's putting them together. So that's the solution, is being able to understand that. Whether it's diet, it's nutrition, it's nutraceuticals, it's pharmaceuticals. It's all part of a solution. It's not just a one size fit all.
Lenny, there is.
Yeah,
Answer?
well, I mean, you know, I'm not preachy about this or about anything. But what I find useful for myself is sort of two related things. One is to weigh myself every day, and I find that's sufficient for me to maintain my body weight. But and that's good. That's a good start. But the reason it's not enough physiologically is that you lose muscle mass with aging, sarcopenia. It's a big problem. We haven't talked about it too much today, but it's real. And if you're losing muscle and gaining fat, your weight might stay the same, but you're not optimized. So I also encourage people to think about weight training for all the major muscle groups, and to sort of find out what your limit is, right? What you can do, what the amount of weight, the number of reps, and so on, and stick to that. Because if you can stick to that, you're not losing muscle mass. And so that combination of weighing yourself, keeping your weight constant, and hitting your reps, I think means you're doing a good job in maintaining your strength.
Anyone else?
Yeah,
Josh? wanna
I
chime
think I
in
have to
there?
disagree with David. There is one silver bullet, and it's split stage. So we're having a 50% discount today. No, I think it's a valid question. It's a life hack. And what I was talking about earlier is, instead of having to do a product or something else, what I do when I'm going to have a hard day, and I get a lot of those, you can change your routine. So without having to add anything, you basically work for about 25 to half an hour, and you set a buzzer. And when it goes off, you stand up, and you just check Facebook, email, but you have a break, and what that's doing is it's resetting your brain, right? It's that working space we have. And if you just keep plugging like hour 1, hour 2, hour 3, there's a bell curve, and you are losing productivity, and it's also kicking your butt. So when I know I'm going to have a lot of large tasks, I'm going to work for half an hour, I take a 5-minute break, I work, and I change the task. You don't want to go back. You need to change what you're working on so your brain can start solving different problems. And when you go back, I guarantee you're going to find you're getting more done and you feel better without having to introduce any external stimuli. It's something I do daily.
But I mean, surely there's a reason why this is a billion-dollar industry. I mean, this may be a simple way to ask the question, but the real tricky question, I think, at least for me, is we are now constantly being asked to start being more conscious about these things. We hear these signals from everywhere,
Yes.
and I think we're sort of sensing that now it's actually possible to make these wise choices. But I think I'm personally even just a little bewildered by the opportunities, but also the opportunity costs of following, various diets, or even just following, which smart device or app that you're going to spend your time on. So in this issue of listening to our bodies in order to stay well, not get sick, and perform better, how do we best listen to our bodies going forward? And is the answer just smart experimentation and just try to ask your friends about good things? Or what are you, as experts in each of your fields, doing? Lenny had a very easy answer. Track your weight and do some weight training. I mean, is it as simple as that? Or is it actually so advanced, as David said, you just got to do everything, and then there's no one answer?
So my answer is not all that different from Lenny's, but my actual formal training is as a controls engineer, right? So I always come back to, if you're not measuring it, you can't control it. So you asked what app. I think Under Armour, they went out and spent billions of dollars and created a really nice ecosystem. So if you want one ecosystem, Under Armour's done a great job. They're not paying me to say that. But they integrate it all together. And so every morning, I weigh myself, I put it in the app, and I track my food throughout the day, and I track my exercise. And so one place at the end of the day, I can tell myself I did what I said I was going to do, or I didn't. And I either feel good about myself or I don't. And that's the negative associated with that. But that's a negative impact on wellness, right? But I think you got to measure it, and you got to look at it every day.
I think personalized nutrition, just so a lot of the companies in this room that are working on personalized nutrition or DNA testing, and I think those will go a long way in an individual making a decision, which boxes do I need to check, which activities, which lifestyle changes should I make so I can get to a certain goal. So I think we'll see that.
I didn't believe it was possible to lose this. I couldn't find out where it was. Just
like your
talk
mic.
into it, yeah.
I like your microphone. it might be that we're just at MIT, so everybody's going to talk about physical goods and electronics and data. But there's a whole another aspect to human performance that hasn't been discussed at all, and that's the subconscious and issues around meditation, blah, 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 blah. I'm curious, I'm not quite sure that this is a question, but maybe you can, Tron, you seem wonderful at turning things into questions, and maybe this is your final question.
That is the only thing I know how to do.
Okay, great. So I will throw that out there and then let you figure out how to ask the panel a really probing, important question that'll elucidate everyone here.
Thank you. No pressure. So the question is simply, all these wonderful things, they are also acting at the subconscious level. How does your current product or engagement tap into that unconscious level, Lenny?
I'm going to answer it more from the point of view of meditation, if I might. I was at a conference once with a group of Tibetan monks, and
As one is, yes.
one of them gave a talk, and someone asked the question regarding meditation. You know, we all know that being a couch potato is a really bad thing. So how can sitting around meditating actually be good for your health? And what he said was, if meditation is done properly, it's mildly stressful, and the benefit comes from the mild stress. And that gets to a more general point here I'd like to make, and that is on this issue of stress in our lives. So a lot of people just say, well, there's too much stress. The less stress, the better. But I believe that there's an optimum amount of stress, which is not zero and is not excessive, somewhere in the middle where you're sort of, you know, humming along. And it's worth thinking about that and whether that's optimized in your life or not.
You guys just shocked a lot of yoga practitioners who are not at that elevated level of consciousness yet, who've been trying to relax for 20 years. So that's shocking. That's every good MIT event should have a shocking moment. Thank you for that. Any other observations on the subconscious? It's an interesting area.
I think
Should be
it's
more
a
of that at
combination of
MIT,
mind, body,
subconscious.
spirit. So it's if you really look at how people who seem to be at peace or live better and, you know, in a healthy place, you know, all three of those come into play. So whatever that means to an individual, whatever, you know, mind has a big influence on it. Spirit, whatever floats your boat, and body is all the things that we're talking about today.
So maybe I'll ask a more specific question to the last two of you. Do you think that your subconscious level considers itself healthy? And if it didn't, how would you know?
Well, I mean,
How's that?
I need one of those pills right now. No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, as of late, it's definitely affecting me. I mean, when you start having multiple things going on, like I've got construction in my house, I've got the business and wife, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many things going on.
Did you just have a wife, right?
Yes,
We had a
wife.
construction wife.
Yeah,
Got it.
no, I didn't
have
build
the
her.
same thing, construction wife.
It is.
Terrible things to combine. Got it.
And the way your brain works is you got to latch onto one. And that's why I talked about trying to break it up and transition, because it's very easily to be overcome and swamped. And I think the subconscious tells you that by lack of sleep. You can't focus. You might have to go to the bathroom. Your body's always trying to help you. It's always trying to help you and compensate. And that's at that subconscious level. It might have you do certain things. And so does it affect you? Absolutely. Does it talk to you?
Yeah.
All the time, I think.
Perfect. I think we have time for two more questions. One is certainly here, over there.
Yeah.
If you were going to recommend to somebody who wanted to better themselves, would you tell them to work on trying not to do something that they want to do that doesn't benefit them, or trying to do something that they don't want to do? Both being obviously a negative or positive.
Do I do something I want to do something I don't want
So was that clear? Would you
to? Can you paraphrase that, Tron?
No.
Doing something you don't want to do. You certainly should try to fight things you do might crave that are not good for you.
I guess that might be the answer. John?
Testing.
That's good.
What role does gender play in all that you've talked about today? Everything from marketing to the science.
So I think everyone heard that. What role does gender play? So we talked about personalized platforms, but we haven't actually addressed the issue of gender.
I mean, in my space, zero. The human brain, it's a computer, and there's a huge spectrum and variation between genders and culture and everything. So in our space, there isn't one.
So in my space, I make a really clear distinction between gender and sex. So gender is a psychological, sex is physiological. And sex has a huge impact on comfort. Women in this room probably on average feel colder than the men do in this room. And there's biological and evolutionary reasons for that. So sex has an enormous impact on not only the products we make, how they're perceived, and how they're tested. So it's very, very significant.
So from a market perspective, when we look at companies, females are by far the decision makers in a lot of the products and services that our companies produce. So therefore, we need to be sure that we're talking to the female, because the female may make the buying decision and influence what the male actually does or does not do. So.
So we have about 4 seconds left, which gives us little time for a lot of wisdom. But given that we have a stellar and extraordinary panel, although there are no females, and I do apologize for that, because we should actually do a much better job, and we are sometimes better than this. But let me ask a final little question for the panel. You've all worked for a number of years in this field that we don't quite still understand, and we didn't, I think, get fully there when it comes to defining wellness. And we've talked about sports and performance and nutrition as a component. But if you were to not just give one advice, because that was going to be my question, but just reflecting on this, when people in this room and they're innovators, each of them has a unique perspective, clearly, and I'm sure that if we had more time, we could probe and get a lot more wisdom out of the audience. It's a field where the knowledge seems to be quite distributed on this area, right? So you have professional providers of insight in this. It's $1 billion market, but on the other hand, there seem to be Tibetan monks, devout yoga practitioners, I don't know, smart professionals, or my 4-year-old. They may have inherently found the fountain of life. How should the rest of us find that?
Wow.
Not an easy question.
I mean, just my gut is, there's a lot of fake news out there. I think there's a lot of industries trying to push certain things. And I think what we can do to just at least give ourselves our fighting chance is education, but really looking at that, is this supplement going to help me? Is this lifestyle? Is this job? Is this activity? And not necessarily quickly jump to what someone's telling you, and really trying to understand how this is going to affect me at the core. And then try it. It might be something you want to do or not want to do, and you might learn it's something that you don't like, and sometimes it's just as important as knowing it's something that you do like.
So this actually is good enough for me. You can ask all the questions you want to the panel afterwards, but there's no way to go wrong when the last word is education at MIT, so we're going to close it there. Education is the answer. Thank you very much.